Now let's move on to curved lines, or what we would call Bezier lines. Bezier is actually a name of a mathematician who did a lot with geometry, and so thus the name carries over into our graphics world. So a couple of pointers or tips before we even start with curved lines, and I'm going to draw them and show you and speak them, but then go back and do this slower. So what makes a curve efficient? This is probably the hardest part that newcomers to Illustrator try to grasp, is drawing curved lines with the pen tool. So you always want to drag in the direction of the bump or the curve. And what's happening right now is I'm click and I drag. So with our straight line segments, I just did a click. Now I'm clicking and I'm dragging out what's called a handle or a direction line. And that allows me to steer my curve. So I always drag in the direction that my curve is going to go, or what they say, the direction of the bump. All right, and my handle, from my anchor point to my handle here, and you're just seeing a preview. I'm not actually drawing this line, it's just a preview. But this distance from my anchor to the handle on my direction line is approximately 1/3 of the curve's total length. Okay, and that's a variable, it depends, but that's kind of a good judgment on how far you should drag that handle. And I click and I drag, and so now I've completed, my curve has finished behind me, and I'm thinking ahead. So which direction is my curve going to go now? If I'm dragging down, it's going to go down. Okay, so the longer I drag my handle, the steeper or more extreme my curve becomes. If I drag it shallow or small, I have a very shallow curve, right? Deep if I drag a longer handle. So those are some tips. The other tip, I'm going to do a Control A and just delete to clean my board here. The other tip is to draw as few anchor points as possible. And what I'll have you do here on your own once we're done is try to draw a circle. So this is what people tend to do. Click and drag. All right, I'm dragging. All right, this looks good. Click and drag. Oh no. Click and drag. I'm starting to get a lumpy, bumpy circle. All right, that looks more like a tomato. I held my Control key. Not so smooth. So the best pointer is utilizing as few anchor points as possible. Now, beginning, I can guarantee you're going to just put tons of anchor points. You're going to be clicking, clicking, clicking. That's just human nature. We do that. But as you become more experienced with the pen tool, the less points, the better. So you actually are going to make a circle with just 2 points. And I'm going to hold my Shift key, because my Shift, as it constrained my straight lines, it will constrain my handles. So my handle is straight up and down. Then I can get super fancy, and if I use my Smart Guides, I'm going to line up my anchor points, hold Shift, and make my handles be about the same. Right? So again, you can go back and tweak with your direct selection tool, but a lot smoother than this lumpy bumpy, so less points better. Okay, I'm going to drag this time with my selection tool to select everything and press delete. Back to my pen tool, or I could press P on my keyboard. So with the curved lines, or we call them Bezier, you click and you drag. Click and you drag, you move the mouse, you click and you drag, you move the mouse, you click and you drag, okay? And this is super important to remember. Perfection is not necessary because I can go back and I can tweak this always, okay? And again, to review what we've got for our sort of anatomy of our lines. So we have our anchor points, anchor point, here's another anchor point, and here's another anchor point. You can see with the direct selection tool how easy that is to relocate them. So this time what I have are my direction lines, you can see, and they come out of my anchor point, and at the end I have a handle with a point. The point on the end of a handle is a circle. Anchor points are always square, so you can make sure you're distinguishing those differences. Okay, direction lines, you always will have 2 that work together when you have a smooth or curved point. Okay, so if I click on this anchor point, if I steer this handle to the right, the bottom goes to the left. It's sort of like a stick through a knot. If you would imagine this being a rope, it's a stick that's in a knot or a pencil. And when you know, unless you break it, which I can show you, we can do that. But if you don't, they're going to work together. And so when you drag one to the right, the bottom part's going to go to the left, and it's going to affect your curve. Okay? Now, like I said, we had corner points where they joined my straight line segments. Let's just do one of those. If I click, 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 okay, Control key, deselect here. I'm going to go back to my direct selection tool. This is a corner point. Okay, so there's an abrupt change. I don't have a handle. Okay, so 2 line segments coming in, corner point. And if I do have a handle, sometimes I can have a straight line going into a curved line, and that would give you part of a handle. Okay, now we're going to talk about this anchor point tool. I have a tool that's underneath, an anchor point tool. And what this does is it converts corner points to smooth points or smooth points to corner points. Okay, so if I just do, right now I have a smooth point because I have that handle that was going out. Because I have this line segment selected, I see the handles that affect just this curve, and it's thinking I don't want to mess with this, so I don't see it. But if I click on this anchor point, all of a sudden I have a corner. So I lost those handles is what happened. And I can convert it back with that same tool, but this time click and drag, and I drag my handles out. So a single click on an anchor point with this anchor point tool converts it to a corner. Click and drag, I'm back to a smooth. Now I can go over here to this and do the same thing. Click and drag, now I have a smooth. If I do a single click, I'm back to a corner. Okay, really handy to be able to do that clicking and dragging. Now, if I'm back to the pen tool, I can also navigate to that convert. Look at my icon. Pen tool, I don't have any keys on my keyboard selected. Hold down the Alt key, and now I have that little caret icon, that's what we call it, but it's for the convert, the anchor point tool. So the anchor point tool allows me to convert. So Alt key, with the pen tool, I will navigate to that. So that's a really great shortcut to get in the habit of using. So Control key, remember, takes me to my selection tool. Alt key brings me to my anchor point tool. Okay, so the best thing to do is just practice. Practice drawing circles, practice drawing some numbers, like something like, say, the number 5, where I'm click and I click. Those are all corner point straight segments. Here's another straight segment. But now I'm going to click and drag out here, right? Click and drag, and it will it tries to think it knows what you want. Now in this case, I'm going to show you. If I click and drag, but I want this part to be a straight line. See how this is curved? I want this to go straight. Easiest thing to do, I haven't clicked yet. I'm going to do one single click on my anchor. Look what happened. I lost the direction line coming from going to the top out of this anchor point. And so now I'm to a straight. I maybe did that too soon, but now I'm to a straight one. And now I can click and drag, and this looks kind of funny, but remember, perfection is not necessary. Looks really funny. There we go. Okay. Let's go back and tweak. So now let's line these things up. I can extend my handles, right? I want to bring this maybe up even more. So you can really alter. Some people start really with a rough idea, and it's easy to fix, just knowing which points you want to play with. Okay, so these are all real good ideas to just kind of mess around. Again, who cares what the outcome is? Just start playing around with it and getting used to the tool. All right, so this ends the curved lines, or the Bezier lines and paths.